All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me today for the 2024-2025 Special Projects Grant Info Session. It's great to be in this Zoom room with you today. My name is Karen Maynor. I'm the Director of Grant Making here at CultureWorks, which is the organization that administers the program. Just a few notes before we dive in. You've probably noticed that as a participant, you have been set to listen-only mode. That means that I can't see or hear you, but hopefully you can see and hear me. We do want you to be able to ask questions though. So as I go through today's presentation, you can submit any questions that come up through the Q&A feature, which will either be in the menu at the top or the bottom of your screen. It looks like two cartoon quote bubbles together. And oh, someone says that they do not hear anything. Let me see. One moment. Okay, it sounds like others can hear. That's good. So let me send a message to the person who just messaged me that real quick. One moment. All right. Well, hopefully most people can hear me. Okay. So yes, so again, as we go through, feel free to submit any questions to me using the Q&A feature. I'll try to keep an eye on questions as they come in through the session, but I'm also going to save a block of time at the end so that I can address anything that I didn't get to in the course of the presentation. You can also use the chat feature if you'd like to say hello or say hi to your fellow attendees. It's a friendly crowd today. Another note is that today's session, you might have noticed, is being recorded. So if you have colleagues who are interested in the program but weren't able to sign on live today, there will be a link to the recording available at the CultureWorks website, cultureworks.org, in the next couple of days. And if you registered to attend today, then you'll receive an update by email as soon as that link is live, so you know it's there. All right. Well, today we are here to talk about the Special Projects Grant. This is a program that is a private-public partnership between two separate organizations, the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District and CultureWorks. Many of you are probably familiar with both of us, but for anyone who is brand new to the program, the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District is a special unit of Montgomery County government that exists to support, sustain, and grow arts and culture in our community. And one of the primary ways that they do that is by using dedicated public funding to provide grants to arts and cultural organizations. They are the funder of the Special Projects Grant, which means that this grant program is supported by Montgomery County residents' tax dollars. That's what we mean by publicly supported. The program is administrated by the organization I represent, which is CultureWorks, and we are the United Arts Fund and local art agency for the Dayton region. We do a great many things, including fundraising and grant making, as well as advocacy and marketing for arts and culture all throughout those 8 counties. So we're two organizations that operate separately but partner on a lot of things, and we're great friends. And on behalf of CultureWorks, I just want to start out by thanking the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District for continuing to support this program with support from the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners. It's very special that we're in a community where local government representatives and leaders recognize the importance of arts and culture and are committed to continuing to invest in the impact that the arts have on community members. The Special Projects Grant Program has been around for 4 years now. We launched in 2020, just before the start of the pandemic. So that was an interesting time to launch the grant program. But we've seen More than 56 organizations come through the program at this point, with over $750,000 awarded in grant funding. So tons of incredible community projects, many of which you've probably experienced as a Montgomery County resident. So the program has helped support the creation of original concert works, theatrical productions, innovative performances like Dayton Dance Initiative's Making Moves the Collab last year, which paired choreographers with artists of different disciplines to create original works of dance. You can see a photo from that performance down there in the bottom. Also, educational programming. It's really important that students of all ages have access to arts education, so many special projects, grant-funded projects will support that effort. Dayton Literary Peace Prize has been a multi-time grant recipient for their student author series, which you can see down here. The Journalism Lab has used funding to support their workshop series, which empowers local community members to learn the power and the skills needed to be storytellers as community correspondents, which you can see up here. And the program also supports many new and established community events that you've probably been a part of, like Art in the City, German Fest Picnic, which you see here, the Hispanic Heritage Festival, and the Dayton Jewish Film Festival. So a great variety of different types of activities and projects supported by this program in the last 4 years, but those are just a few examples. So to give you a sense of whether your organization or your project that you have in mind might be eligible, we'll go over the basic rules of applying. This is a program that is open to Montgomery County 501c3 organizations, schools, so the K through 12 schools, parochial schools, colleges and universities, municipalities and government agencies, collectives, and other unincorporated groups with a 501c3 nonprofit tax-exempt fiscal agent. So basically, to apply, you need to be some kind of a nonprofit organization, but importantly, you don't have to be an arts and cultural nonprofit. We've seen a lot of really amazing social services nonprofits come through the program. So as long as the project that you have in mind is arts and culture focused, then you can apply for funding through the program. And also, we want to make sure that this program is supportive of small and grassroots groups who might not yet have achieved that 501c3 federal tax-exempt nonprofit status. So we still want you to apply, but in order for us to award grant funding, we will have to do it through a fiscal agent you work with. If you haven't worked with a fiscal agent before, they're basically a 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization that agrees to accept the grant funding on your behalf and to make sure that the grant funds are used according to what you outline you're going to do with your project. So you as the applicant are still the one leading the charge, but you have usually a larger nonprofit working with you on the financial side of things. This program is not open to arts and cultural organizations that already receive funding through the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District with their other grant funding program, which is for general operating support. So when this program was started, the idea behind it was that the MCACD and also CultureWorks provide grant funding to many of the very large arts and cultural organizations in the community, but there are small and mid-sized organizations that are doing incredible work, and we want to make sure that we're supporting them as well. So if you're one of those large organizations who gets operating support, unfortunately, you can't apply through the Special Projects Grant Program. As I mentioned above, this is a program for nonprofit entities. So that means that it is not open to small businesses. So if you're a for-profit, unfortunately, you can't apply through this program, even if you were trying to set up some kind of a fiscal agent relationship. If you are a small business who's looking for funding to do arts and cultural activities, I encourage you to check out the Small Business Resource Center, the Entrepreneur Center. We can send you some places that might have more resources available to you. And the grant program is also not open to individual artists. However, The Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District does fund another program that CultureWorks administers called the Artist Opportunity Grant, which supports the creation of new works and professional development of individual artists. So that is a program that typically starts accepting applications in the summer, usually early August. So if you're an individual and you are looking for grant funding, please reach out to me and I can tell you more about that opportunity. So I gave you a few examples of the types of projects that have been funded in the past, but to go a little deeper into that, this year, the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District is providing $250,000 for this grant cycle, and nonprofits can apply for up to $10,000 of that to complete their projects. The projects have to take place between July 1st of 2024 and and June 30th of 2025. And because this again is a publicly funded program supported by Montgomery County, we want to make sure that any funded projects benefit the local community. So your activities also do need to take place within Montgomery County. Your projects don't have to be new, though. We love seeing new projects, and we do place some funding priority on supporting new projects. But if you have something that you've done before that you want to see continue, we welcome applications for those types of projects as well. So some of the examples I gave earlier of long-running community events are things like festivals and series that happen year after year. But you can apply for special projects grant funding and explain, how is the special projects grant going to enable you to make that experience even better and stronger for community members? A lot of organizations will think about things like whether they can introduce a new theme for the coming year, whether there are any new components that they might add to that ongoing series, that sort of thing. But something to keep in mind when you see the terms new and repeat projects in the program guidelines and later on in the application, that gets a little confusing, but when we say new and repeat projects for the purposes of application, we mean projects that have never been funded by the MCACD Special Projects Grant Program or projects that have received funding before. Something that is very exciting that the MCACD has changed this year is that in the past, there was a rule that organizations could only receive special projects grant funding for the same project up to 3 times. So again, using a festival as an example, you could be awarded 3 special projects grants in different years to support that festival, and then you couldn't apply again. But because this program wants to uplift small and mid-sized organizations, we know that it takes a long time to build your sustainability, and 3 years is likely not enough time for you to take an event and turn it into a self-sustaining activity. So they have eliminated that rule. So if you're listening in right now and you are an organization that has already received 3 special projects grants for the same project, great news. If you want to apply for funding for that same project this year, you are welcome to do so. In terms of the types of projects, we group them into these 5 categories. Cultural and multi-arts refers to programs that incorporate multiple disciplines of the arts. So that's usually where you'll see those big community events. If you're bringing in musicians, visual artists, dancers, they're all working together. Education is pretty self-explanatory, but that could include anything from, again, those traditional in-classroom K through 12 arts activities, or maybe you want to provide some kind of an educational opportunity that's for adults where they're going to be learning new artistic skills. There are also, of course, always lots of projects that are events, performances surrounding the literary arts, performing arts, and the visual arts, like wonderful exhibitions. And lastly, we have a category called capacity building. And I've bolded this one because it's a little bit different than all of the other categories. Capacity building projects are short-term projects that are designed to enhance an organization's ability to carry out its mission. So I'll go into that a little bit more here in a moment, but the important thing to know about this category is that because it the projects themselves are not necessarily arts and cultural in nature. If you want to apply in this category, this is the one category where you do have to be an arts and culture focused nonprofit to apply. So social services nonprofits can apply for all of these other project categories, but only arts and cultural nonprofits can apply for capacity building. So to explain why, capacity building projects, like I said, these are projects that make your organization stronger. So some common examples are strategic plans. If your arts and cultural nonprofit hasn't done a strategic plan in a while and you're trying to figure out what the next 5 years look like, that is a significant financial investment, but it's one that will make your organization better able to continue providing impactful arts and cultural programming to the community. So you could use a special projects grant in the capacity building category to hire a strategic planning consultant, for example, to come in and work with you and shape that plan. You can also use it for professional development training for your staff and board. They're already talented, they're already knowledgeable, but maybe there are some skills that would make them even better at what they're already doing. You could use it for things like marketing plan and website overhauls. That's a very common one. We know that technology moves fast and the world of graphic design evolves very rapidly too. So maybe you've been struggling along with a very outdated website and branding and you want to do a refresh. That's a great use for capacity building. And then if you want to maybe build some new programming, but you're not sure whether the community is going to be excited about it. You want to make sure that anything new you're doing aligns with community needs and interests. That would be a great use for capacity building funding to conduct something like a market research or feasibility study. Capacity building is all of those things, but what it is not is making purchases or repairs to your facilities. And we see some confusion there sometimes because capacity and capital are very close together. But capital expenses like buying buildings, making repairs, making large equipment purchases are not allowed under this category. So a good way to remember it is that capacity building is about building your organization's skills and toolbox. It is not about improving your building or facilities. And again, I'm happy to answer questions, more questions about that as we go. These are just some frequently asked questions that applicants have year to year. So I've told you the types of projects that you can apply for, but in terms of how you can use the grant funds to support those projects, these are some very common expense areas. So artist fees, if you have, again, an event or an arts and education project that you want to do and you want to hire artists to help you do that work, you can use grant funding to pay those artists. If you need to rent a venue for your performance or exhibition, you can use grant funding for venue rental fees. Art supplies, marketing materials, and services. So again, if you need to print flyers, program booklets, if you need to pay for paid social media marketing to get the word about your event or project out there, those are all eligible expenses. And if you want to pay a marketing professional for their time to do those marketing activities in support of your project, that's also an eligible expense. And then, of course, your staff time. So these are project-based grants. So any staff time has to be tied specifically to this project. You can't, just use grant fundings for your general overhead. But if you have a project coordinator who's going to be working on it, then absolutely you can use the grant funds to pay for the cost of their time. For nonprofit organizations and schools, there is no matching funding requirement. Again, we want to support small and mid-sized organizations in particular who might not have a lot of leeway in their budget, so you don't have to provide matching funding. If you're one of the larger types of institutions that can apply, like a college, a university, a city, or a government agency, then because we recognize that you're usually operating on looking at a much bigger financial picture than many of the other applicants, if you are one of these types of institutions, you are required to provide a one-to-one cash match for your project. So what that means is if you are requesting $10,000, then you have to show in your project budget that your college, university, etc., is going to be also contributing $10,000 in cash towards the project. So we don't include in-kind towards the match. It has to be actual dollars that your organization is contributing. We also ask that each applicant only apply for one project. This is especially important to keep in mind if you are an entity like a college or university, because we know that you might have multiple departments who are excited about applying. You might have a modern languages department and an art department, but we will only accept one application, even from a large institution like a college or university. So you'll want to talk internally about who's going to be the applicant that year. And only one application per project. So if you're a nonprofit who's going to be collaborating with another nonprofit on the same project, you should collaborate on one single application. We can't accept two applications from separate organizations to fund the same project. And people, we have a lot of really amazing administrators who are thinking way ahead. So they always ask, is there a final report involved if you're awarded funding? And there is. There is a final report that's due 30 days after your project end date, and where you'll report on, of course, how you used the grant funding, what the impact was on the community and the organization, how many people were involved, and all of that good stuff. Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a dive in a minute here into the application itself, but I think it's helpful to start by just knowing what this overall process looks like. So you've come to the info session, you're off to a roaring start. Next up, if you have a project in mind, but you're not sure whether it's a good fit, we want to help you answer your questions, give some shape to those project ideas. So we will be having project ideation sessions on February 13th and 20th. These are just really quick 15-minute chats one-on-one with me where you can ask your burning questions and I'll give you some guidance if it sounds like you're on the right track. March 1st, there is an intent to apply deadline. So the application for this program happens in basically two phases, the intent to apply and then the full application. The intent to apply is a very short form that I'll show you in a few minutes, where you're just giving us the very basics of what you have in mind. Tell us what organization you're applying for, from. Tell us about your nonprofit status so we can make sure that you're eligible for the funding, and then tell us in very broad strokes the project that you have in mind and when you think it's going to happen. And we take all of those intent to apply forms and our staff reviews them for basic eligibility. So again, we're just making sure that you're a nonprofit, you're Montgomery County based, and the project that you have in mind fits within the rules of this program. After that intent to apply deadline, we will review for eligibility for a couple of weeks. And then in late March, we'll reach out to everyone who submitted an intent to apply form and let you know if you are eligible to move forward to the next phase, which is the full application. So you'll have access to that full application in late March, and the deadline will be April 24th at 4 p.m. All of this is submitted online. After the application deadline, we do another eligibility review, make sure nothing's changed, and then eligible applications are sent to a separate, independent grant panel of amazing community volunteers with knowledge in the arts. And they will actually score all of the applications and make the funding decisions for the program. They review the applications independently for about 3 to 4 weeks. And then in mid-June, we bring all of the panelists or the grant reviewers together for public grant panel meetings, which you as applicants will be invited to listen into. And at those meetings, they discuss the applications, what was really strong in the application, what could have been better. They make suggestions for how applicants can change things in future cycles. And then at the end of the meeting, they submit their final scores. They look at a ranked list from highest average score to lowest average score, and they make their funding recommendations based on that ranking. So the way that they make those funding decisions is based on the total amount of funding that we have available for the program in a given year, which again, this year is $250,000. So usually they'll look again, starting at highest average score to lowest, how many of these projects can we fund with the amount of funding available? And then they can choose to award either full funding or partial funding. So for really strong applications, they might say we're going to award the full amount that the organization requested. If they had a strong application, but it wasn't exceptional, maybe we'll award 85% of the request, and so on and so forth. Other reasons why they might award partial funding instead of full funding would be if we get a large number of really strong competitive applications and there are more projects and funding requests than funding available, sometimes panelists will decide to award partial funding so that they can provide at least some support to as many projects as possible. But we really emphasize that we want these grants to be meaningful. So we aim to not award you a smaller amount than is realistic. We don't want to put strain on your project. We want you to be able to complete it. If you are selected for funding by the grant panel, then the first grant payments will be issued in July. The first grant payment goes out 30 days before your project start date. And then the final installment payment is after you have completed the project and submitted your final report. Again, all the projects funded through this cycle need to be completed by June 30th of 2025. Now, applying for grants can be intimidating. Maybe it's your first time. Maybe you just, want to get some additional feedback to feel really confident about your application. And we want that for you. So we have a couple of opportunities for you to get feedback. I mentioned already those project ideation sessions for just the big picture kind of questions that you have. And then later in the process, if your organization is invited to complete the full application, you will have an opportunity to submit a draft of your application for feedback before the application deadline. So we'll communicate with you more about this later in the process, but the deadline for you to submit a draft would be April 10th. And then we have outside grant experts, sometimes past grantees, and then of course our staff who compile written feedback on your application and tell you, where you could add some clarification or more information, what questions come up for us that the panelists might have. And we will send you all of that feedback within a week so that you have it a week before the April 24th application deadline. So take us up on those opportunities. There's a link to start signing up for those ideation sessions available on the CultureWorks website right now. I'm taking a look real quick here at the questions to see where we are so far. Great question. Someone asked, can you be a fiscal agent for a grassroots effort and also still apply for your own project? That is an awesome question, and the answer is yes. So if you're a nonprofit organization that's going to be the fiscal agent for a grassroots organization that is applying, you can do that and also apply separately for your own project, as long as they're different projects. That's a great question. Someone asked, can we apply for different things in multiple categories? Unfortunately, no, you will. Each year, we only accept one application from each applicant. So you'll have to pick and choose which project you want to go for this year. And someone asked, can multiple organizations apply for grants to partner with the applicant with an organization to complete a project? So again, for that, only one organization can apply for funding to support a project. So we know sometimes a project has multiple organizations involved, but only one can apply for project grant funding. Okay, great. So again, I'll show you the actual application and intent to apply in a moment, but I think that it's helpful to start out by understanding how projects are evaluated by the grant panel that makes the funding decisions. So we use an established scoring rubric. So the panelists, as they read your application, they have this scoring breakdown next to them where they assign points. It is a 100-point scoring rubric that is pretty much evenly broken into three main scoring areas. The first is project quality and artistic vibrancy, and this is where they're looking at the quality of the arts and cultural activities that you plan to do. How well thought out do they seem to be? Are they creative and innovative and exciting? And they will also look at the qualifications of any artistic or creative personnel who might be involved. So if you are bringing in artists to support the project, you're going to want to provide some information about who those artists are and what their qualifications are. The second area is community impact and engagement. So because this is a publicly funded program, as I mentioned before, we want to make sure that it's impactful for Montgomery County residents. So we'll ask you some questions so that you can explain, what you think the impact of this project is going to be on the participants, and you're going to demonstrate that you understand the needs of the community that you are serving. That being said, in this area, the way that your organization is defining community could be a lot of different things. And I don't want you to think that your project has to reach thousands and thousands of people. We look at each project kind of on a case-by-case basis. So who is your audience? Your audience, if you're organizing a festival, it might be really huge and very broad. If you're doing an arts and education project, your audience might be very small. Maybe you're planning to work with 12 students. So basically, we just want to see that you have thought about who these audience members or participants are, what their needs are, and that you are making effort to make sure that the project is going to serve those needs. And then finally, the ability to complete and manage the project. So this is where we're looking at the quality of your project budget, the quality of your project planning, whether the timeline seems realistic, and those sorts of things. Now, capacity building, because it is a slightly different ball game in that project category, some of the scoring criteria are slightly different, but these projects are still scored across those same three main areas. But since capacity building projects are more inward looking and you're strengthening and building upon your organization's internal processes and planning and all of that stuff, these projects they very well might not have a community audience. You might be working on a project that only involves your staff and board. So we changed the language slightly to accommodate for those differences. So project quality and artistic vibrancy, you're probably not doing artistic or cultural activities. So instead, we're going to look at evidence that your capacity building project is going to enhance or strengthen your ability to carry out your arts and cultural mission. For community and impact and engagement, we're looking at whether this project is going to help you better engage the community. So something like a website overhaul or a marketing overhaul is a great example of that. You need an effective website in order to have the community effectively interact with you. So that's the sort of thing we'll be looking at there. And then ability to complete and manage the project really doesn't change. We're still looking at your budget, your project plan, and your timeline. All right. Let's see. Pausing here for another question. Can a college use outside donations as part of the matching grant? That's a great question too. Yes, as long as the matching funds for your college or university are real dollars, then yes, you can absolutely do that. And we've seen that in the past. Sometimes, again, the only organizations that have to show matching funds are those big ones like colleges, universities, cities, etc. But sometimes those types of organizations are pulling from their own actual just regular budgets to make the match, and sometimes they have a different funding source. They might have a totally different grant that they've applied for. They might have donors who want to support the project. So that is absolutely acceptable. That's great. Someone is asking if they're planning a community event in July that needs funding, would they qualify? If your community event or your project kicks off in July, then yes, you can absolutely apply for funding through the program. All the activities have to take place between July 1 of this year and June 30th of next year. The person asking the question also mentioned that they run a business. So if you are a for-profit, a small business, then unfortunately you would not be eligible to apply for grant funding through the program. But I can try to connect you with some resources for small businesses that might have some ideas about how you could find funding for those activities. Okay, let's take a little tour here. And I'm going to show you where the intent to apply lives, where some other awesome resources are that you can use as you are going through this process. There we are. So the entire application process takes place online. So your starting point is going to be the CultureWorks website, which is cultureworks.org. And to find information about the Special Projects Grant, you'll go to the Apply for Funding page, which is up here. Right now, Special Projects Grant is right at the top because it's the one that just launched, but it moves around throughout the year. So you can always use the Special Projects Grant shortcut button at the top of the screen to get to the information about this program. I encourage everyone, before you start your intent to apply, before you start your application, to read the full program guidelines. I've given you many of the really key points and highlights of the program, but it's always useful to review this fully before you start your application process. The guidelines go into a lot more detail about the types of expenses that are allowed, for example, and things that the program can't fund. And one of the most useful areas in the guidelines is a detailed breakdown of those scoring categories that I mentioned. So I gave you those three big scoring areas, but each one of those has its own more specific criteria beneath it. So I always tell applicants that when you're working on your application, it's a really great idea to have this document by your side at all times and take a look at how the panelists are going to be reviewing the applications. Under each scoring area, we've given you examples of what makes an application really strong in this area and what makes it not so strong. So as you go through, you look at project quality and artistic vibrancy. That's about a third of the overall points that your application can be awarded. So if you go down here to strong and exceptional, this is how we would describe an application that is strong or exceptional in the scoring area. The project is compelling, imaginative, or innovative. Project activities are described in detail. Artistic and creative personnel are highly qualified and have been confirmed, and so on and so on. So this is a really good tool for you to keep an eye on. The panelists who review the applications have this exact same language in the scoring rubrics that they use. So you know exactly how your application is being evaluated. All right. Back to the CultureWorks website. There's always information about the next steps in the process here. So if you want to sign up for one of those ideation sessions I mentioned, you can do that using this link. And if you keep scrolling, this is where the button lives that will take you to the online application platform. So again, the first phase of the application process is an intent to apply, which is due Friday, March 1st at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you click on that button, it's going to take you to a totally different looking website. This is a separate online grant platform called EC Impact, and this is what the homepage looks like. The first time that you apply for funding, you'll need to set up an EC Impact account, so you can use that using the click here to create a new EC Impact account button. If you've applied for the program before, or you've already used EC Impact for maybe a different grant program funded by Montgomery County, you can just use your existing sign-in information here. Now, what I'm showing you is a test account, so it has more stuff in it than you will probably have in your accounts, but I'll give you a quick tour to give you at least an idea of what you're looking for. Something to remember is that EC Impact is the online application site that is used by all of Montgomery County. So there are going to be a lot of funding programs that don't apply to your organization that you'll want to just kind of skip past. What you are looking for is the Special Projects Grant, the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District Special Projects Grant for 2024 to 2025. So if you've been awarded funding before, you might have some sections up here from your last application cycle. But here's what we're looking for down here. Right now, you'll see the intent to apply section. When you're logging in for the first time, there will be a button that says click here to get started, I think. Once you've started, it'll say click here to continue working. You can also find the intent to apply using this left-hand navigation menu that lists all of the applications and forms that are currently open in EC Impact. So again, you just want to make sure that you're looking for Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District Special Projects 2024-2025. I know there's a lot of stuff in here, so it can be a little bit overwhelming the first time you look at it. In that intent to apply section, you're going to see that EC Impact breaks every phase of the application process into the different forms. So the intent to apply phase only has one form that you have to fill out. So if you go down here, there is a link that says MCACD Special Projects Intent to Apply. And if you click on it, that takes you to the intent to apply form itself. And I promised that this was a short form. It really is. You're going to give us some basic information about your organization. You're going to tell us your nonprofit status. So if you're a nonprofit, incorporated, tax exempt, if you're a college, etc. Here you're going to tell us if you're applying, if you plan to apply with a fiscal agent. So again, if you have 501c3 nonprofit tax exempt status, then you can just click no. You're applying just on your own. If you're a grassroots group that doesn't yet have 501c3 status and you will need a fiscal agent, you'll click yes. And then we'll ask you who that fiscal agent is going to be. But we understand that at this time you might not yet know. So give us an answer here if you have one. If you don't yet know which fiscal agent you're working with, that's okay. You'll just need to have them in place by the time that you submit the full application later on. Then you just tell us a little bit about the project that you plan to do, what it's called, when you think it's going to happen. We know that some of these dates might change as you continue planning the project as you're preparing to submit your application, so it's okay if they have to change later, as long as the dates are between July 1 of this year and June 30th of next year. You'll tell us if this is a new or repeat project. And again, this refers to whether this is a project that has received special projects grant funding before. If you've never gotten a special projects grant for this project, it'll be a new project. And if you have, then it'll be a repeat project. Here, you tell us how much funding you are requesting. Now, as you go through, you'll notice that there are these green circles with question marks in them. This means that we have provided some more instructions or information. So if you hover over that green question mark icon, it'll tell you here the maximum grant request is $10,000 as a reminder. Your total project budget refers to, as it sounds, the total amount that you think that this project is going to cost. It could be that the special projects grant is going to cover the full cost of the project. So your answer, if you're requesting $10,000, your total project budget would also be $10,000. But maybe you know that the grant's only going to cover part of the costs, so then you would tell us how much the overall picture is going to be. Again, if you're one of those large institutions like a college or university, you are required to provide a one-to-one match here. So that means that if your funding request is $10,000, then your total project budget should be at least $20,000 because you're going to be matching any funds that you request. Total agency budget, anytime you see the word agency in EC Impact, it's referring to organization. Again, this is a platform used by a lot of different departments, so some of the language can be a little wonky sometimes. But we're asking here, what is your organization's total annual budget? And we give you some instructions here that usually nonprofits will use line 12 of their Form 990 or line 9 if you're using Form 990 Easy. What we're looking for here is just to get a sense of how this project fits within the overall scope of what your organization is doing. You're not judged on this. We just want to have a clear picture of the size of your organization and how the project fits into your overall budget. Then you tell us what type of project you're applying for, all those categories that I mentioned before, and a project summary. In the intent to apply phase, this is truly a summary. You don't have to go into a ton of detail. Just give us the basic, what you want to do, and again, when it's going to happen. So you can keep it pretty short. We just need to have enough information that we can determine that it's an eligible project idea. And then how will your organization use the requested funds? This also doesn't have to be super detailed at this point. We just want to know the basic expense categories that you plan to use the funding for, so that again, we can make sure that that they're eligible expenses. So you might say that your organization is going to host an artist workshop series in August of 2024. And your organization is going to use the requested funds to pay for writing materials, to pay for the venue where the workshops are going to happen, to pay for a guest speaker that's going to come in or a guest instructor, those kinds of big picture things. Once you've filled out your intent to apply form and you feel happy with it, you're going to click Save My Work and Mark as Completed. This means you're saying, I'm done with this form and I'm ready to submit it. You can also, if you want to keep working on it later, you can just use the Save My Work button and log in at another time. But once you mark it as completed, you'll see it changes the status on that page that came before to show that this form is completed and ready to submit. And it has to say this in order to allow you to submit it. Once you're ready to submit, there's a blank spot here where you'll tell the system where you want your submission confirmation to go. So you just give your email address, and then you'll certify that any information you're submitting is true to the best of your knowledge and click Submit. And you'll get an immediate email confirmation that it's gone through. So very short and sweet, intent to apply form due March 1st, 2024 at 4 p.m. So now we're going to pretend that you have submitted your intent to apply. It looked great. We're excited to move forward. You've gotten a notification from us in late March that says your intent to apply was eligible, and we are inviting you to complete the full application. Once the full application is open, you're going to go through that same process. There will be a new section. I already have it because my account is fancy, but you won't see it yet. But same thing, it'll be Special Projects 2024 to 2025, but it'll say Application 2024. And just like the intent to apply, it'll be broken into different sections. The application is, of course, bigger than the intent to apply, so there are more sections involved here. And I won't take you through every piece of this, but I want you to feel like you know what to expect. So I'll just show you a couple things. This is what the application form looks like. Some of the information, basic info about your nonprofit, is going to carry over from the intent to apply, so you don't have to fill it all out again. And then it'll ask you again for information about your project. You can change your project dates if they've changed since you submitted intent to apply, all that stuff. And now we get into the meat of the application. So what we're looking for here is more narrative about what the project is going to be. So here you'll give a full project description where you give us details about the who, what, when, where, and why of the project. And we give you some reminders about things that you want to address. We'll ask you how you're going to implement the project and provide a clear timeline. It's really helpful for grant reviewers if you use a bulleted list or something along those lines to provide your project timeline. So maybe you say January of 2025, and then you give some activities, and then you say February. Ooh, I can't type today, apparently. And then you say February, what you're going to accomplish, and just really break it down kind of in bullet points so that they can see the overall flow of how the project is going to happen. We'll want to know who's involved in the project. So this would include people who are actually implementing the project, so your project coordinator if you have one, and then also any artistic or creative personnel that are going to be involved. And you'll just tell us a bit about what their role in the project is and what their qualifications are. And you'll have a place later where you can upload full resumes or biographical statements to tell us more about these individuals, but you get started here. We're going to ask how you will evaluate your project. So how will you know that your project has been successful? And we give you some examples of ways to approach that. And then here, we'll ask you again how you're going to use the funds, but this time we want you to be more detailed. And there's a budget section I'll show you momentarily, and you want to make sure that anything that you write in your use of funds sections matches what we see in your budget spreadsheet. So if you say that you're going to use the funding to pay 5 artists to work on the project, then in your budget spreadsheet, we want to see that there is funding dedicated to paying artist fees, for example. I mentioned that grant panelists can choose to award funding in full or to award partial funding. So we ask you to think about how your organization might modify the project if you're only awarded partial funding, and we give you some percentages to work with. And then lastly, COVID-19 planning. We know that, we're still dealing with the realities of COVID, and we want to make sure that any community events are safe for the participants. So just give us a little information about what precautions you'll take if there's some kind of a surge and a very, a dangerous strain of the virus or something. All right. There are other sections here for, again, this is only the full application. Statistical information sounds scary. It's not. It's just how many people are involved in the project and how many artists are involved. And then you can give us a sense of how many participants you think you'll have. Project budget. We give you a spreadsheet that auto-calculates everything so that you don't have to do that brain work. You just have to plug your numbers in where they belong. A functional note about how you actually fill this out, you'll see that we have broken it down into a few different columns and a bunch of rows. So what you're doing here is in the first column where it says Special Projects Grant, you're showing us how you're going to use those grant funds. So if you are requesting $10,000, then this column all the way at the bottom, when it's all done, should total $10,000. If your project has other funding sources that you're going to be covering, then you're going to break those into this other cash expenses. This is anything where there are real dollars associated. If you have any kind of in-kind support, if you plan on, for example, marketing your project and you have a great friend at the local newspaper who's going to be providing you with $500 in free advertising, then in your marketing section, you're going to be showing that $500 somewhere here. And then this column will total all of those things together. To input numbers, you can see I can't click on any of these. That's because you have to click on the header in each different section. So personnel expenses, if you click on personnel, it opens up this more detailed table where you put in your numbers. So I'm going to put in nonsense numbers I have a project coordinator that is going to work on this project, so I'm going to use $1,000 of grant funding to pay for their time. I'm bringing in a bunch of artists, so I'm going to, or no, I'm sorry, actually, pause, hold on that. Support, maybe I have a marketing person or something that is going to help me with this, so I'll put them in there. And when you save and return, you'll see that it adds those up and puts them in this category. If you're bringing in artists who don't work with your organization, then they will go under outside fees. That's why I hit pause. So if I'm hiring artists from outside the organization, I'll put the costs for them here. And again, and you just keep doing that. What your total project budget is. So again, maybe it's all covered by the grant funds. Maybe you're splitting it into a couple of different funding sources. And then you'll want to show us what your project income is. So maybe the grant is going to cover the full expenses. So you'll just say MCACD Special Projects Grant and then whatever those expenses are. Or maybe you're planning to pay for part of the project using earned income that your organization has coming in from your admissions, memberships, and those sorts of things. Maybe you have identified another funder who's going to provide funding for the program. So we'll say that you have a foundation that has said, we're going to provide you with $5,000 to support the project. If that is just an anticipated contribution, you'll put it under projected. If you have a contract from them saying that they're definitely going to do it, you can tell us that here in the confirmed column. Save and return your work. And this is really important. So again, the system's doing all the math for you. But when you get down to the bottom, it'll say surplus or deficit. So this is whether the project is going to bring in more funding or less than what you're budgeting for. We want to see this for the purposes of your project budget. We want this number to be 0. In other words, the amount of funding that you're bringing in from all of these sources is the same amount that you're spending on the project. It's a break even. We know that in reality, projects don't always end up there. You might end up with a surplus because you have great ticket sales or additional funding you weren't expecting. That's okay. But for the purposes of budgeting, you want to make sure that this says 0, like this. There we go. Okay. And the last section that you'll see in the full application is your supporting documentation, which you can review at your leisure, but this is just building off of the narrative that you're providing in the application form itself. So again, providing more information about those individuals who are supporting your project. For the budget section, you have that budget spreadsheet you fill out, and then we also want to see a budget breakout document. This is a self-created document. There's no required format for it, but basically you're going to provide more detail about each of those expense areas. You saw that in the budget spreadsheet, there's not really a way for you to type any information into it. You can't say 5,000 in artist fees is for X, Y, and Z. So that's what you'll do with your budget breakout document. And I'm happy to work with you on those documents and give you some pointers when you get to that phase. But just know it's about providing more detail there in those expenses. We'll ask for some work samples. So we want to see what your organization has done before, or if you have artists who are coming in to execute this project, you might provide work samples from them to show the quality of the artists that are going to be involved in this project. And then letters of commitment and support. If you are working with a collaborator organization, if you're bringing in those outside artists and other professionals, it's really helpful to get some kind of communication from them saying, I'm aware of this project, I'm committed to being involved if it's awarded funding, I support the project, and so on. So compile those letters. We recommend getting started on that in advance if possible. You can always explain to anyone you're collaborating with that you're waiting to find out whether you're awarded funding. But if you can get some kind of a letter from them or even an email, that can be really helpful in building panelists' confidence that this project is going to happen and move forward. Okay. Let me pause. I saw some questions coming through. Uh, really good ones. Okay. Someone asked, is the agency budget the budget of the fiscal agent? That's an awesome question. Let me go back to that so that we're all looking at the same thing. So here in your application, where it's asking for the amount you're requesting, the total amount that the project will cost, and then your total organization or agency budget. This is looking for the total budget of the applicant organization. So if you're a grassroots group that's applying in partnership with a fiscal agent, we want your grassroots group's budget, not the fiscal agent's. So the answer could quite honestly be zero. We know that there are a lot of grassroots groups that are like, we don't really have a budget. That's okay. Again, this is not being judged or evaluated. We just want to have a sense of the scope of your operations. So that's really excellent question. If you are applying for a musical event, can you attach photos of the previous year's event for the work sample? Absolutely, you can. I would always encourage applicants to think about the type of project activities you're doing. So for something like performance, a musical performance, it's probably going to be more effective if you can provide a recording, even a quick video showing the actual performance versus a still photo. So what you could do, though, is in that supporting documentation where it asks you for a work sample, it doesn't let you provide a link here, but you could create just a Word document that where you paste a link to a YouTube video or something like that and explain this video is from a short performance from last year's festival or last year's event. We typically request that if you're providing something like a video or audio sample, that you keep it to 10 minutes or less, just because panelists are reviewing a lot of applications. That's a fantastic question. Someone asked, are we able to apply for funding if our planning will begin prior to July 1st, but the project will happen after July 1st? What an awesome question. 10 gold stars. Yes. So we know that projects, you might already be in the process of getting ready for these activities. So your project might have actually already started. That's totally fine. As long as any of the activities that you would be using the grant funding for would only be happening from July 1 to June 30th. Great question. Someone asked, can two grassroots organizations apply using the same fiscal agent? Yes, you can. There are some fiscal agents who have the capacity to serve as a fiscal agent for more than one organization, and that's totally fine. If an organization wants to collaborate with a specific school on a project, can they also apply for a project too? Just let me know if I misinterpret this, but it sounds like an organization has a project of its own that they want to apply for funding, and they're also planning on being involved in a project that a school is going to do. As long as they're two separate projects and there's no overlap in the funding, then that would be okay if you're listed as a collaborator on someone else's project. Okay. All right. Great questions. Keep them coming. Okay, so going back here while you're thinking of your amazing questions. Going back here for a moment, just to do a quick recap about what's coming next. So you've gotten your preview of the intent to apply form online that you're going to complete and submit by March 1st at 4 p.m., please. Between now and then, if you want to talk with me more about your project and ask more questions and find out if it sounds like you're on the right track, you can sign up for one of those short 15-minute project ideation sessions happening February 13th and 20th. Following the intent to apply deadline, I would recommend that you get a head start on your project planning. So you can start reaching out to those artists and project collaborators and asking them to put together their letters of support and their letters of commitment so that you have those documents ready when it comes time to complete the full application. You're going to hear from us in late March to let you know whether your intent to apply was eligible. And if it was eligible, then we will invite you to complete the full application, which you'll have plenty of time to work on. If you want to get some draft feedback from an outside grant consultant or a member of our staff, you'll submit a draft application by April 10th. And then you'll submit your final, beautiful, polished, well thought out, super competitive application by April 24th. I'm trying to think, let me see. All right, keep asking questions here. Let's see. Someone asks, if a unit of a university applies, does it need to show the total university budget? I'll double check on this. I believe in the past, we have asked for that information, but I think it would be okay to provide just the department's overall budget. That's really what we're looking for. Okay. Someone asked about starting a music education project and whether or not there are age requirements. There are not. The past special projects grants for especially for arts and education activities, we've seen a whole range. So some activities have been, geared towards elementary school students, some have been high school students, some have been for adults. Nope, there's no age requirement there. They also asked if it's a new project, do we have to have the location and logistics finalized? Definitely not for the intent to apply phase. For the application, I would say that you absolutely want to try to have all of those finalized. When the panelists are looking at the application and evaluating, especially that administrative capacity or the ability to complete and manage the project area, they are going to be looking to make sure that you have all the details nailed down. So projects that have identified and confirmed their venue are going to be the strongest in that area. If you don't yet have a venue confirmed, I would recommend at least listing the venues that you're trying to work with and give some specifics about when you're going to have that information finalized to at least show the panelists that you're thinking about this and you're working hard on getting it all finalized. Great. Okay, let me see. We are almost up on time, so I know that I just threw so much information at you, but I hope that it was at least helpful information. If you have follow-up questions for me, I am happy to hang on here for a few more minutes and try to answer them through the Q&A, but you can also reach out to me directly after the session. Again, I'm Karen Maynor. I'm the Director of Grant Making at CultureWorks, and my email address is kmaynor@cultureworks.org. I will do my best to respond to you in a timely fashion. Again, I hope to see many of you at those project ideation sessions that are going to be starting next week on February 13th so that I can help you craft your project. We want you to be successful. We've seen so many amazing projects come through the program in the first 4 years, and we know that this year is going to be no different. So I'm here to support. There are no bad questions. So please, use me, use CultureWorks as a resource, and I'm always, always, always happy to help. Again, a recording of today's session will be available on the CultureWorks website, cultureworks.org, hopefully by the end of the week, but Monday at the latest. And all of you who registered to attend will receive an email from me as soon as that recording is available so that you know it's out there and you can refer back to anything that we covered today. I will also provide copies of the slides from the presentation if that is helpful to you. Okay, we are about at time. So at this time, I just want to thank everyone who signed on today. It was great being here with you. Thank you for your awesome questions, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.